Ando, it feels to me like people more than ever before, at least in my lifetime, are afraid of their potential, consciously or subconsciously. That if there is this person we could be, becoming them and going through the trials and the tribulations that will take us to become them becomes scarier and scarier with each passing day. And we look at this person we could be and we have a dream of what our life could be like, right? A lot of people, they want to be rich or they want whatever, but they're afraid of becoming the person they need to become to make that dream come true. What's your perspective?
I don't know if I'd particularly articulate it as a fear of their potential, more so a fear of the process. I was speaking to a really, really old and dear friend of mine, kind of grew up with this guy. The kind of guy who was like good at lots of things when he was younger, slightly older than me. I looked up to him, absolute legend. He's gone through a bit of a trial in time in his sort of, I guess in his adult years, has really knocked his self-esteem. And we're having a conversation, just ideating about some business ideas. And it happens to always be the kind of conversations I get into now with everybody. And he expressed a real fear of failure, which was for me remarkable because it's something that I recognize in so many people. I think one of the problems we have with our culture today is our perceptions around failure. And I do understand it, but I've had to sort of retrain myself. Like there are two outcomes. One of them is I attempt something and I succeed in what I'm attempting. So I take the W. And the other one is where I take the L, but the L is not a loss. It's a learning. I win or I learn. And I only fail when I attempt. And I think I found that when people express, I guess, a hesitance into pursuing their dreams, a lot of the time it boils down to not the dream itself, but the fear of failing and a public failure. Like in this entrepreneurial journey, I've had to almost abandon my pride completely. A term I use quite often is shaking every tree that moves. Like I've gone to every single person close to me at some point for a handout. And I don't mind if they say no because I'm on to the next. And you know what? If they say yes, I'm probably coming back to them in a few months. And I've just had to abandon that level of pride because I don't have a choice but to pursue what I'm pursuing. Like purpose dictates it. And if I need to rely on my network to do so, I'm going to do that because when my network needs to rely on me, I'm committed to being there for them as well. And yeah, I would say fear is the big blocker. I think pride is a massive aspect of that. You know, you've got social media where everyone's putting up the best version of themselves. So you're only ever seeing people win. LinkedIn is a great example of this where it can be quite, I don't want to use the word fake, but it can be quite incomplete. You don't see the whole picture. Like for every success, we could have had 50 failures. And I think you know about loads of aspects of my journey, particularly around if not raising investments or securing grants or even securing deals and going for bids. Like my past is littered with failing forward. And I'm actually quite proud of that. I read that as a badge of honor.
So is the actual fear the fear of the perception others will have of your failure? Like I find this, I'm concerned that if we don't get to the root of why so many people are not stepping into their potential, we won't be able to encourage them to effectively step into it. Mm-hmm. So if we understand, okay, it's not I'm afraid of my potential, at least not consciously. It's I'm afraid of the process of getting there. And the process of getting there is my fear of what other people will think of me when I inevitably fail. one of my other guests, Samara, said to me, you have to suck. You have to understand that any transition you make, any change, is going to require a period of suckage at the beginning. You're just going to be bad at it, and you therefore will fail a bunch. Is it not even the fear of failure, but the fear of other people's perception of our failure that's actually the biggest blocker? Because if it's that, we can hyper-target that, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure it's as simple as that. I think absolutely there is a fear of what other people might think and what other people might feel towards what you're doing. But like, let's be honest, failure has some real consequences. So I've been married, the missus, 13 and a half years now, a long time. Been with her 20 years, highs and lows. We've gone through periods of great abundance. We've gone through periods where we've looked at each other like, well, where's the rent though? Sure. I mean, and failure has real consequences when you attempt something. Like the ability to not be able to pay a mortgage for a few months. And we've got 2 kids as well. Like the stakes are very, very real. If I was living with like, I don't know, parents or something, and I was on this entrepreneurial journey and I had that safety net, perhaps I'd feel differently about some of the risks I take. But as of now, like I need to feed my children. I need to feed my family. And I think, yes, there is the aspect of when you do something very, very publicly, what people might think. I mean, a lot of us will say, we don't care what people think, but I think on some level, we kind of all do, on some level. But I think there is the very real consequence of that failure. So whilst you're going through that suckage period, what are the ramifications on the rest of your life? What are the sacrifices that you need to make for it? Like we've sold houses as a result of this business thing. And like even till today, like I'm not even ashamed to say that, like, after buying my first house like 21, in uni with my student loan, I was like riding high off that whole like, yeah, I'm on the ladder. Right now I'm renting. Because I'm like all in, all my chips are on the table, right? And yeah, we have made sacrifices for it. And if it goes belly up, which it won't, by the way, but if it does, I do have to look around and think to myself, what have I deprived my children of? What have I deprived? What the life I deprived my wife of? Oh, I had a well-paying job before going into entrepreneurship, like absolutely insane to come and do this. So yeah, there is massive consequences to that sacrifice. I think it's if I'm hearing correctly, you did get to a point where you felt like, well, I've got nothing else. I've got nothing to lose.
Kind of. The thing is, like, I hear what you're saying about risk, because there's perhaps a balance between risk, my internal fears, right? So all of these things are survival emotions. Am I feeling too afraid to take risks? Am I feeling afraid because of other people's perspectives of me? Both of those things are survival emotions. They're just different ones. And risk is something we can understand because it affects us so physically, right? If we don't take risks, we can't reach our greatest potential. However, other people's lives are in our hands and we have responsibility. Other people's opinions of us are also a survival emotion. They're both equally survival emotions. They're just born of different things. One is, you could argue, more fundamental because it's very physical and direct. So risk is very physical and direct. Sometimes I wonder if psychologically our brain actually understands the difference. So something I know very well is that sometimes the brain cannot distinguish physical reality from perceived reality. Yeah. So one of the reasons why hypnosis works, why visualization works, I'm sure you've heard visualization, the term visualization, and it's getting thrown around a lot more now. And for kind of good reason, it's really powerful. So for example, have you heard this study where I think it was with exercise, weightlifting or something. They had 3 groups. Group 1, lift the weights. Group 2, visualize yourself lifting weights. Group 3, do nothing. Group 3, of course, nothing happened. Group 1, lifting the weights, muscle grew by 24% or whatever, something you'd expect. Visualization only, muscle grew by 23%. I might have botched the numbers slightly, but it's something like that. It was very tiny less, almost exactly the same. The brain, if you're really good at visualizing, doesn't understand the difference. The brain, part of the brain that understands that something's happening in my head and something's happening physically is actually different from the part of my brain where the thing is happening and the brain is responding.
Yeah, that's so cool.
So we can perceive ourselves, I could perceive myself as not being good enough, and it will be true.
Yeah.
If you believe you deserve a seat at the table or you believe you don't, you're right.
Yeah.
For that reason, which is physically unfair, right? There's a lot of injustice in this world and a lot of unfairness. But physically, because the brain doesn't understand that you're being unjust to yourself, we adopt a victim mindset instead. So the risk of I can't pay the bills and the risk of other people might laugh at me, the brain doesn't really get the difference.
Yeah.
Both of them are us not being good enough, quote unquote. And so the logical brain is what we need to use to differentiate, but the brain isn't very good at it. So I'm wondering almost what this cocktail of underlying challenges is so that we can work to overcome them, right? If you were to come to me, I don't know, when did you start this business? How many years ago?
About 5 years ago.
Just if you from 5 years ago was to come to me and say, I'm thinking of doing this thing, what do I do next? And I were to have a conversation about your underlying, how you feel about doing it, and risk was to come up, your perception of other people's perception about you was to come up. We have to tackle these things differently, physically, for your logical brain to be comfortable moving forward. We would need to tackle them psychologically the same way.
Okay.
For us to be able to move forward. And so this is what I'm trying to figure out is there's a pattern between those that end up being successful and patterns that don't. And sometimes it's just life didn't allow the people that tried to be successful because they had something going on. And I'm wondering how we recognize that, how we address that, how we empower people to move through that.
There's so many things there, man.
So start where you want to start, because I haven't actually asked you a proper question since that first question, but
there are so many things here, because you're talking about, I guess, the visualization, but also the spiritual aspects. By the way, I just love the fact that you're bringing all of you into this, and I think it's super important to understand that. You are the way you are for a reason, right? And I personally believe that everything down to the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing now is down to some sort of higher purpose. There is a reason I've been put on this earth. And you touched on also the fact that you're put here to impact other people's lives. And if you're not walking in that thing which I call purpose, it doesn't just impact yourself, but it also impacts, at least detrimentally, all of the other people that you were supposed to impact positively with whatever you've been created for. And I don't necessarily think it's linear in the sense that it's just one thing either. I'm not trying to imply there's this one thing. I just know we are all here to serve each other. That's something I'm very convinced of. Sort of fast forward to finding the missus, or we're sort of high school sweethearts, met in college. And again, one of the things that attracts us to each other is because we would be just vibing off of each other from a vision perspective. And it's so key to run with somebody where there's a match in your ambition. And I think the thing that strikes me about that particular individual, that lady who I owe so much to, is no dream was big enough, or no dream was overreaching. And you could say something that would be ridiculous to somebody else, and to them it was like, yeah, great, how are we going to do it? And they're saying the same thing to you, and it's so important to run with someone like that.
What does that feel like, just to put a pause in the story, finding a person, and this doesn't necessarily have to be a partner, although it's great if it is, it could be a business partner, a friend, whatever,
Yeah.
where there's just so much alignment. Like, what energetically do you feel shifted for you when you got that, when you found that?
I just think it's that idea that, and it reinforces the idea that nothing is impossible. I think they say, like, show me like your 5 closest friends and I'll show you who you are, right? So there is an osmosis to the relationships you keep, which is why as entrepreneurs it's important to keep mentors around. It's important to keep even other entrepreneurs who are slightly ahead of you around. It's important to do that. And I was fortunate enough to have been exposed to that from a young age, and interestingly, as I've gone on in life as well, and the network has changed, and people have come in, some people have left. You find the vision getting even bigger and expanding, and I guess the world of possibilities is just to the point where the moon is not far. They say sky's the limit. I hate that phrase. The sky is definitely not the limit. If the sky was the limit, we would not have had the moon landing, for starters. And I guess what I'm trying to communicate is the only limitation is your thinking in that sense. I mean, you've got somebody who's always reinforcing it, always challenging it. So it's not all good. It's like a refinement process, and it's great. It's like iron sharpens iron, right? That's what it is.
Yeah. How much of that do you put down to finding the right person? How much of that do you put down to becoming the right people together?
I was lucky. I was lucky. I don't think by any stretch I was the right person. I've evolved just like she has evolved. But I think what we were the right people for each other at the time to sort of essentially hold each other's hands and grow. So I say I bought my first property when I was 21. That's not actually true. We bought our first property with our collective student loan. That's how we literally finessed the system.
Yeah.
We'd always wanted to do it, but it was the coming together. And you see it oftentimes, right? When two minds come together to achieve something, they're capable of much more than what they would have done if they did it individually. There's a particular scripture that I love that talks about how one will chase 1,000 and two will chase 10,000, and that's something that we've kind of kept to us. And yeah, it's funny because fast forward 20 years, actually, that same award that Alex won, like I was nominated for, like in this weird sort of comeback moment. And for me, it shows the importance of running with the right people. So Alex is an advisor of mine now. I get his time, which is amazing. Just like he's probably more of a friend, if I'm going to be honest. But nonetheless, you just got to be around the right people. And
how do you develop those relationships effectively? Because if we meet the right people and we think they're cool, we want them to advise us. There's what the next step is. There's how do I develop a relationship with this person? How do you go about?
Yeah, let me be super clear on something as well. I don't want to give the wrong impression with some things. Alex never once sat me down and brought me in on something like, I'm going to show you how we're going to close this deal, and now we're going to sell our business for a multi-million exit. No, he never once did that. But actually, the proximity to that energy was where the power was. It was in observation. It was in seeing things that were done wrong, seeing things that were done right, similar to what you were saying, like learning from other people's mistakes. It was in seeing that empowered me. And actually, we've then done a few initiatives since then, sort of looking at how we can kind of take some, I guess, young guys who might be involved in sort of some South London rubbish, if you know what I mean. And we've done a few initiatives, taking them out of that setting and putting them in the proximity of people who are excelling in business, who are excelling in their professional careers, just to unlock their thinking. And for me, it was proximity at that point that unlocked my thinking. How did I develop those relationships? I think an easy way as well is trying to be an asset for somebody. So I bear in mind I was working for his company for those weeks. I like to think I did a good job because I mean he still at least has some respect for me. But no, I mean now I can just rock up to his house and like there's a conversation there because I'm of value to them. So like yeah, similar to how you could call me to come to a podcast, right? And because you've imparted some value in my life, in my business, I'm more than happy to do that. I almost feel indebted to you. And yeah, I think if you lead with value, you're definitely going to cultivate the right relationships.